हे तुझ्याकडे सेल धरून ठेवा दररोज बघ दररोज.
I request everybody to stay on mute. Please mute your mics and we'll
असून दे
start the
बाकीचे उद्या करू.
presentation. Mr. Prashant.
हा
Okay. So here we go. So namaste and good evening. I'm Prema Kakte, Secretary of YPS. So welcome to the YPS Saturday Meets. And thank you for tuning in and hope you have all connected on the computer or the laptop for a better experience. If not, please go ahead and connect on the bigger screens. So today's presentation is underwater photography, genres, gear, techniques, and more by Mr. Vandit Kalia. But before we start, here's an announcement about our next webinar, which happens to be on January 24th. The title is Stepping into Salons by Anita Mysore. So the YPS International Salons 2026 is open. So please participate and also tune in on the 24th to learn about picture submissions for salons. Now, over to a short synopsis about today's presentation. Underwater photography, genres, gear, techniques, and more by Mr. Vandit Kalia.
So, should I start?
Yeah.
Okay.
So from staying for a month at the base of an active volcano to diving in the middle of sharks feeding on byproducts from a fish factory, Vandit Kalia spends a lot of time each year chasing unique underwater images. So in this talk, he shares some of his favorite images across various genres of underwater photography, the techniques, equipment used to achieve those images, and how trying to make those images helped him connect more deeply with the magic of underwater world. I'm sure it's going to be an exciting presentation, especially, I can't imagine having to spend so much time not only near a volcano, but then so close to the sharks, that too when they are feeding. So I definitely look forward to this presentation. Now for a short introduction about Vandit himself. He has been diving since 1991 and is a and has been a scuba instructor since 2001. So Vandit is one of the most experienced dive professionals in the country. A finance MBA from Wharton, he quit a consulting career in the US and moved to Havelock to start Diveindia. So India's largest dive center and the pioneer of diving in the Andamans. He is virtually all the top sites in the region were founded by him and his team. So an avid wildlife and nature photographer, he's been shooting underwater since 2006 and is currently on the mission to get behavioral shots of as many shark species as he can, especially hammerheads. And before I hand over the screen to Vandit, here's request to all. Please mute your mics and also turn off your videos. And you can type in the questions in the chat box, which will be taken up at the end of the session. Or at the end of the session, you can also unmute yourself and come on the screen and ask him the questions directly. So here, we go ahead and hand over the screen to Vandit to take us all scuba diving.
Thank you, Prema. Thank you guys for attending.
Over to you.
Thank you. As Prema said, I mean, I've I took up sort of photography in about 99, 2000. And I don't really consider myself a particularly talented person when it comes to sort of doing artistic stuff. But I think I've got it from my mom somewhere, because somewhere along the lines, I started sort of enjoying the whole process and getting photos that I enjoyed. So I basically, I've been, like I said, as Prema said, I've been diving since 91. I started my own dive center in the Andamans in 2006. And in 2022, I moved out of the Andamans and I moved to Bangalore, where we run a scuba diving center here. We do trips. I do like underwater photography workshops and things like that. I mean, while I do mostly underwater, I mean, it's basically anything nature. I like wildlife, landscapes and stuff like that. So I try to get to Africa every week or every year or 2 years for 2-3 weeks and so on and so forth. In this case, what I want to basically just start out by showing you some photos to hopefully get you an idea of how amazing the underwater world is. Hopefully inspire some of you guys to, who are photographers, to get into sort of underwater photography as well, because really, if you like nature, it's amazing sort of what you can see underwater, start something like this. You have being sort of, this tiger shark was eating this tuna head about 3 or 4 meters from me. Imagine if you were sort of trying to see an actual tiger or lion eating a kill with nothing between you and the animal, right? That's the kind of thrill you get underwater. And a turtle going up. Turtles are one of the things that whether you're a big, you can see turtles are relatively easy to spot in the sense that they're accessible on fairly shallow sites. Big sharks generally sometimes require you to go deeper or find very specialized locations for them. And turtles, you can find them almost anywhere at shallow depths. And they're one of the animals that, whether it's your first dive or your 5,000 dive, you never get bored of shooting turtles. They're just so cool to watch, so cool to photograph. And because you can spend time with them, you can really sort of find creative ways to shoot them, right? Then, of course, once the coral reefs themselves are absolutely sort of the amount of color and variety that you see, it's just crazy. I mean, here you have, I think you can probably tell if you look, you have a barrel sponge on top, and there's about at least 6 or 7 different species of fish that you can see right away. And if you were to go deeper and look at some of the subspecies, there are probably another 10 or so hiding in the background. So that's the kind of variety you see when you go diving. Here's a close, and again, underwater photography, as we'll see in a bit, can be everything from really vast reefscapes to really small stuff where you just focus on one animal at a time, like this goby. They're about maybe 2-3 inches long. They hide in rocks and they just poke their heads out, look at you, and they hide back in and try to get a photograph of them looking at you. Is quite interesting. The behaviorally, they're sort of, they just poke out, very interesting stuff to spot. And then, of course, you can never get tired of sharks. So this is.
Can I interrupt you, please? Yeah.
Yes.
I think we can go slower. We would like to see the pictures. You can go a little slow so that we can, have a look at the pictures.
Absolutely.
A little longer time. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
This is a thresher shark. The interesting thing about thresher sharks is that historically they're deep water sharks. They usually find at 200, 300 meters. And in some places in early dawn, they come up to shallow depths of 20, 30 meters to have the gills cleaned by cleaner fish. There's one place in Philippines where for some reason they've sort of, over the last 4 or 5 years, they've sort of started coming up even shallower to almost 10, 15 meters and staying there for most of the day, which is very unusual behavior for threshers, because pretty much everywhere else in the world, you have to work hard to see them shallower than 50 meters. And diving, typically 30 meters is kind of the limit that you go on for recreational diving. So these are sharks that you normally look down on. So seeing one above you is actually quite a rare experience. And the thresher sharks are known for having a really long tail. The upper part of the tail is almost about 50 to 75% of the length of the body itself, sometimes even longer. So this is one sort of going over my head, which I was, to be honest, I was not expecting. And going from the big to the small, this is a cuttlefish. The interesting thing about them is also they can change the color to camouflage themselves against the background. So when you see them in a color like this, actually it's a good sign. That means they're quite relaxed and don't feel threatened or threatened enough to change the coloration. One thing that sort of, even as a wildlife nature photographer, I find a lot of people get too caught up in getting the image to the point that they engage in behavior that's detrimental to the animal. I make it a point to try to avoid any images where the animal is defensive or threatened or nervous. So yes, this yeah. So, and this is actually from last year. As global fishing as the fishing around the world increases, fish stock across the world are diminishing in size. I think we are maybe 5-10 years away from a precipitous crash in the marine fish population. If you think about what happened with wildlife in the early 20th century, where India, for example, at that time had 1 lakh tigers, and then it dropped to less than 1,000 really fast. We are at that sort of inflection point with marine life as well. So it's very rare to see these mega schools of fish. This is actually a part of the school. There's a place where you get about 600-700 barracudas forming a school, and that's just, probably 20-30 years ago that's probably a more commonplace sighting. Now it's super rare, and I'm very privileged to have seen it before sort of it gets wiped out by humanity. And then sometimes it's not just about documenting what you see. Sometimes I kind of like the sort of the fine art aspect of underwater photography. It's an evolution in photography, right? When you first started shooting something, whether it's birds or wildlife or underwater, it's a documentary. Hey, this is what I saw. Then it's then you get to portraits. Okay, here's a nice shot of a lion or a nice shot of a tiger shark or whatever. And then you evolve to behavioral shots. And then I think once you have enough behavioral shots, you start to find unique compositions. And I think for me, one of the biggest challenges I've set to myself is finding interesting photographs of commonplace subjects. It's very easy to shoot a nice photograph of a tiger shark because tiger sharks are cool. It's much harder to shoot an interesting photograph of a common fish. So this it's something that I'm quite proud of. Here, I'm lying on my back, looking through this coral, waiting for a fish to come into the background. And I underexpose the shot, and I use my strobes to light the image. Right. So that was just to give you a primer. What I'm going to talk now is that when you think of underwater photography, it's actually not just they're actually different genres, right? So just like, for example, on terrestrial photography, shooting wildlife and shooting, let's say, frogs and snakes is actually quite different in terms of mindset and how you approach it. Same thing with underwater photography. Yes, the only commonality is that you're underwater shooting, but within that, there are different genres, and each of it requires different equipment, different techniques, and also a different approach to how you make the image. So we'll talk about the genres, then we'll talk a little bit about the challenges of underwater photography and what kind of equipment you use to overcome those challenges. Then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about the shooting process of sort of how it is my personal shooting process, which I admit, like I said, I don't consider myself naturally gifted. So for me to shoot is a very sort of methodical approach to getting good images. So I'll show you sort of how I go about that, and and see if there's any lessons to be drawn there. So underwater, there's generally three broad genres of photography, and again, there is some overlap between them. They're not mutually exclusive, but you can sort of think of it in 3 ways. One is macro close-up. This is sort of what most budding underwater photographers get into. As the name implies, it's a close-up subject. It can be either really small stuff like macro size. It can even be sort of mid-size objects, but stuff which is generally fairly stationary, like crabs or shrimps. They don't move too much. Where you have time to set up, you're trying to bring your camera close, you're trying to set up your lights, you're trying to sort of stage the image the way you want it. This is really nice for people who are starting out with, because you have a lot of room for creativity with how you do your lighting and your composition. And at the same time, it's relatively accessible in the sense that no matter where you go, there's always a subject that you can find to shoot. Like, crabs and shrimps are pretty much anywhere in the world you find them. Then you have portraits. Portraits is pretty much sort of, it can range from documentary, like, look, here's a whatever, here's a shark or whatever, all the way to sort of, fairly, involving images of sort of with high impact. And the last, and this is my personal favorite, is wide angle photography. So for me, this is the equivalent of doing sort of landscape and sort of big animals at the same time. Here you're shooting with a wide angle lens. Here what happens is that sometimes you have to sort of see the scene very quickly, compose and shoot in a fairly rapidly, because the conditions are changing. Maybe there's a current. If there's an animal, maybe you have a couple of seconds before it passes by. Other times you can take your time, set up, wait for things to fall into place. So it's, for me, it's a very sort of always changing and fairly challenging sort of genre of photography. And like I said, this is my perception. Some people obviously like macro more, some people like portraits more, so whatever. So I'm going to show some images of mine from each of these categories. And like I said, I'll talk, if there's something interesting about how it was shot, I'll talk about that. If you have any questions about how the image was shot, feel free to ask me at the end. Happy to go through that. So when you start out, so the most interesting thing about the underwater world. So now, okay, let me ask you this: if fish, right? All of you know what a fish looks like, right? Now, when you dive underwater, yes, you see a common fish. You see maybe the shape is a little bit different, maybe the color is a little bit different, but in the end, a fish is a fish. You have a shark, small fish, medium size, whatever. It's once you start getting into the macro realm is the small stuff. That's where the ocean sheds the familiar and starts taking all these shapes and designs that are truly mind-boggling. Nudibranchs are a classic example of this. They're in the sea slug family, the invertebrates. The name nudibranch means external gill. So these animals actually have the gills on the outside of the body, not inside. They can range anywhere from about 1 centimeter to maybe 3-4 inches in size typically. And there are thousands and thousands of them that come in all sorts of colors and shapes. In fact, more than they estimate that about 30-40% of the world's nudibranch species so far haven't been properly classified as well. So so when you go diving, sort of many people just focus on finding a new nudibranch that they haven't seen. You can dive for 10-15 years and still see species that you've not seen before. And like I said, the shapes and coloration are just amazing. Like, look at this. This was about maybe 1.5 inches in size. Sorry. And again, now sticking in the realm of macro, this is called a peppermint shrimp. The shrimps are sort of, again, one of the more common residents of reefs. You can find them pretty much in any kind of coral reef, be it tropical waters or temperate waters. To give you a sense of perspective, these bubbles that it's hiding in, each bubble is about the size of my thumb tip. So now that gives you an idea of the scale of the shrimp. So they basically hide in there. You have to wait. You have to position your camera, and you have to wait for the currents to sort of cause the bubble call to spread out a little bit and show you the shrimp, and then you take the shot. So the challenge here is making sure you focus on the eyes, because even a centimeter of shake in your camera and you've lost focus. The challenge is also making sure the shrimp is there. You focus, the shrimp decides to move, and you're looking here and the shrimp is somewhere there. So they are actually surprisingly challenging to photograph. Very little, they move quite quickly. And you only get a glimpse of them for maybe a couple of seconds at a time. So, and then one very common one is scorpion fish. Scorpion fish are the ambush predators. So they generally lie, they spend the entire time sort of, they have the perfect life, I think. Just lie in place, food comes to them. If I could live like that, I'd be very happy, man. Anyway, so they actually, because of the flash that I'm using, the coloration is exposed a little bit better. If you look at it in natural light, they're actually very, very well camouflaged. You can't see them. In fact, many times one of the common risks of divers putting their hands down near rocks and coral sometimes is that they can accidentally touch scorpion fish, which is a really bad idea, because you can see these red spines on the fins, right, and along the back and the tail. Those spines are venomous. So if you get stung by them, it's going to be really, really painful. Imagine someone taking hot iron and running up and down where you've been stung. That's how painful it is. But again, the good news about shooting them is they're pretty docile. They lie there, they look at you, and if you spend too much time with them, they give you this, what are you doing, guy, kind of look. But you have time to sort of, to take photos. See, this is actually not the greatest photo. It's a very simple documentary photo. But I just think it's such a cool subject. It's just nice to show you what a scorpion fish looks like. And now, related to the scorpion fish family, they were still talking about sort of ambush predators, things that are sort of well camouflaged. There's something called a frogfish. The frogfish and then the anglerfish family, so they have a little a lure in front of the head. This one actually it doesn't have a good one, but this probably is a juvenile. And again, there are different varieties. There's some that look like leaves. There's some that look like rocks. And each of them, like I said, they lie in wait, and when a prey species comes close, they attack. Back to crabs. This is called an orangutan crab. It's again in the same bubble coral that I showed you earlier with the peppermint shrimp. And they're called orangutan crabs because they're kind of orange in color and they look kind of hairy. They're pretty cool, and they kind of have a bit of an attitude about them. They're like, hey, what do you want to have a go? So they're always a little bit sort of fairly cocky crabs, if I may say so. And again, the same challenges that apply with the pepper. They're a little bit easier to photograph because they're a bit larger. Unlike peppermint shrimps, which are semi-translucent, here you actually have a decent amount of contrast between the crab and the background. So your camera's autofocus actually catches a little bit easier. And like I said, they're a bit more prone to sort of staring at you or giving you a stare down. So, which is kind of interesting. With coral blennies, going back to things possibly, this looks like it is a very simple photograph, but in terms of shooting, this is probably the most, ask any underwater photographer, these things are one of the most frustrating items, fish to photograph. So the whip coral that they found on is like a little, like its name, it's a long whip-like structure, which just floats in the water. So the current generally moves. And it's about maybe 1.5 inches in diameter. It can be about 1 to 3 meters long. Whip coral blennies are semi-translucent fish that are about 1 centimeter to about 3-4 centimeters, no, about 2-3 centimeters in size. And they live in pairs on this coral. So basically they go up and down on the coral. And they're also very skittish. So basically, if you even make eye contact with one, it'll freeze for a second, then it'll dart. And it moves so quickly, you actually can't see it move. 1 minute it's there, next minute it's gone, and like, where is it? You have to look for it again. So the challenge of getting this shot is it's in a current, because the whip corals are found in currents, which brings in the nutrients. So the whip coral is moving in the current. You are floating in the water, you're also moving in the current. Then this little fellow is trying his best to sort of appear, disappear, appear, disappear. But then when you get a photograph, you start looking at all these details, which you cannot see if you just look at it to the eye. So one thing I've realized is that they're obviously translucent, but the eyes actually on whip corals match the color of the coral they're on. Some coral tends to be this orange in color. Other whip coral tends to be redder. Some tends to be a bit darker. And in almost all cases, the eyes of the blenny are a very close match to the color of the whip coral, which I thought was pretty interesting. And again, the scorpion fish family. Now we start to get interesting. So this is a fish that's not happy to see you, right? Again, with the light, you can kind of make out that it's a fish. You can kind of see the eyes on the side there. The lips are fairly obvious. But that's how you actually notice them, because from the top you can't see the lips. You just see a blob, and the blob is a very close match. If you see the background there, that's what this fish looks like without the light shining on it. From the top, it's got the same kind of sort of sedimentation on its skin, so it's camouflaged really well. To find this various types of scorpion fish, you generally get a guide who really knows those specific reefs really well and knows where to look for. So here, basically, we have a guide who's probably dived the same area for about 10-15 years. He knows what to look for, and he helps you find it. And then you look for it from the side and you go, oh, I see the face now. Seahorses are always fun to spot, right? Believe it or not, seahorse is actually fish. Most people don't sort of they look unusual, but so seahorses have one is they have a snout. They don't have scales like fish. They have kind of these spiny extensions. They have a prehensile tail that actually they use the tail to hold on to seagrass or corals, etc., to stay in place. But they actually are actual real fish, despite their unusual appearance. So normal seahorses can be anywhere from maybe a couple of inches to almost about 4 or 5 inches in size. And now we continue to get in the realm of the weird, right? So I showed you guys frogfish earlier. So this is again in the same frogfish family. These are called rhinopias. So rhinopias are basically frogfish which have these external sort of growths on them that mimic the background. There's 4 types of rhinopias. This is called the lacy rhinopia. And again, it's actually very hard to sort of even when you're looking at it, you kind of have to take different angles to find out the eyes, because you look at the mouth and then you kind of work your way backwards and kind of spot the eye, because it's actually not so easy to spot. Again, all these fronds are moving around and disguising it, and so on and so forth. And again, these are about maybe 8 to 10 inches in size. This is a different type of rhinopia. It's called a paddle flap rhinopia. Also, it's found in a slightly different location. Again, you can see like sort of how easy it is to mistake it for leaf or detritus or something like that, right? It doesn't really look like much, especially in the water. They kind of sway a little bit in the water, and without the use of flash, like I said, they're a lot more sort of better camouflage than it appears here. And this is the holy grail for almost every underwater photographer, the pygmy seahorse. Pygmy seahorses are about 1 to 2 centimeters in size. Now they're found in these gorgonias, which can be anywhere from 2 to 3 meters. These gorgonias have little segments on them that are about the size of a finger. And imagine somewhere 1 centimeter 1 centimeter in size is this guy holding on. And again, gorgonias generally face the current. So basically, if the current is going this way, the gorgonias be facing here. So you as a photographer have to either swim against the current, you're getting moved back and forth. Just acquiring focus on these is really difficult, especially as I get older. Unfortunately, my eyes aren't what it used to be. And actually, this is one area where I think the old style DSLRs did a better job than mirrorless. With DSLRs, you can actually the optical focusing of the viewfinder, I think is at least for me, is a bit easier to use. Yes, the EVF of a mirrorless is supposed to have the same resolution, but I find it doesn't work so well when the camera is moving, you're moving, and so on and so forth. It's very easy to lose focus with it. This for me was taken by me back in the days when I used to shoot the DSLR, and again, the hard part is here the trick is you pre-focus the camera, and then you just and the guide basically puts a pointer stick close to where the seahorse is. You acquire focus on the pointy stick, then you slowly move your camera back and forth till you find the subject, and then you click. Of course, it's not going to be precise, right? If you move even a millimeter or two, this thing's out of focus. In fact, here one of the things to be cautious about is you're very close to the subject, right? You're maybe a few inches away from the subject, and you're using lights. The lights actually heat up the water, and so if you do a lot of lights, it's actually if the water gets warmer, it's very stressful to the pygmy seahorse. With strobes, it's kind of okay because the strobes also take a few seconds to recharge, but then the water cools down. But when you have video lights, you're taking a video and you beat these big ass video lights right next to the animal. There have been cases of seahorses actually dying because of the heat emanated by the video lights. So this is an example where I think photographers, especially videographers, need to balance that desire to get a great photograph of a pygmy seahorse with the responsibility of not damaging what they shoot. So I tend to get a bit preachy about this kind of stuff because I've been a photographer. I've also been running a dive center, so we've been getting underwater photographers as well. And you would think that underwater photographers would be nature lovers first. But the sad reality is that these days, they're photographers first, getting a good photo is more important to many of them than actually respect for what they're shooting, and, which is a very unfortunate state of being. So, if I can inspire people to sort of take good photos and be careful, nothing like it. Now let's talk about portraits. Portraits are sort of something that anyone can start. You don't need super complicated equipment. You just need to have a little bit of patience, and you need to have a keen eye. So a lot of these portrait shots I see, and they can be, for example, some of the previous shots I took, they require very specialized macro equipment. They require very good diving skills to stay stationed in the middle of the water, and they require generally nice viewfinders and sort of, and et cetera, et cetera. Portraits, if you have a good eye, you can shoot with pretty much any camera that you want. It's like sort of street photography. Street photography can do with anything. The camera doesn't matter as much as your eye and your vision. The portraits fall in the same category. Like I said, turtles. I love turtles. You'll see a lot more turtle photos. When I go dive, if I see a turtle, that's it. I'm there like 10 minutes. I'm just happy to be watching the turtle, just observing it, taking pictures. And I've had people go, "Hey, you've been diving for so long. Don't you ever get tired of turtles?" Never. It's like when I go to a national park, if I see a tiger, I have photographed tigers hunting. I photographed the tigers on a kill. I photographed the tigers fighting. I don't care. Even a sleeping tiger, I just watch it for half an hour, 2 hours even, because it's amazing to see. Turtles are the same for me. They're just really cool. They're always up to something or the other. They're very expressive faces. This guy was eating, and then he just decided, okay, he had to move on. And as he swam by me, he kind of gave me a big whack with his paw. I mean, he had space to go by. And he just, you know what? I'm going to go through you as opposed to the side. I'm like, okay, bro, it's your ocean. Knock yourself out. So, and again, you will notice that the turtle is approaching me. So when I take this shot, it's not scared. It's not feeling defensive. It's feeling comfortable enough that it thinks it can come right at me. And like I said, whacking me with its paws is a sign that it's definitely not scared of me. Goby, this is super cool. Again, I showed you goby earlier to start with. Here's a different type of goby. You notice the two horns on the front. Like I said, they're just really fun to spot. Almost every reef will have one or the other. So you don't have to go looking for exotic stuff on every dive. I don't need to see a shark or a manta or something. Just look in the reef. There's always interesting stuff to see here. I mean, if you think about some of the wildlife awards, right? There's some people are getting awards for shooting very common subjects like backyard birds and stuff like that. Gobies are they're like that. They're the equivalent of trying to get an amazing shot of, let's say, a spotted dove or something like that. A common species, but a good photo is always interesting. And my favorite, tiger sharks. I love sharks. So basically, and tiger sharks they're big. They can be potentially aggressive, but they're also very curious. So the interesting thing about sharks is shark hierarchy is based on size, not species. So bigger shark will always sort of be dominant towards a lesser shark, to a smaller shark. Now, when you're diving, I'm about 6 foot tall with my fins. With fins, I'm about 2 meters in size. So most smaller sharks don't come close, especially when you're doing scuba equipment, you're blowing bubbles. They're like, we don't know what you are. We stay away. Tiger sharks are big. They get to be 3, 4, 5 meters long. And they are the bosses of wherever they are. So they are not scared. They will come right up to you. And being predators, if they think they always try to sneak up from you from where you're not looking. And the moment you turn to look at them, they turn away. So here, I was actually shooting something to the left. So I had my camera here and I was shooting. Then noticed movement from the eye and I turned. And this is taken with a fisheye lens, by the way. 180 degrees field of view. So you can see first how close he was. I mean, if I'd reached out with my hand, my hand would have been on the other side of his head. He was maybe less than a foot away from me. When I turned, I took the shot. The moment I turned to him, immediately he turned around. So very curious if I hadn't turned, what he would have done. Actually, no, I'm not that curious to find out. So yeah, so tiger sharks, big and inquisitive, and mostly they're okay. Like I said, I've done a lot of dive with tiger sharks, and they're scary and intimidating, but they're also sort of indifferent to humans. We're not natural prey for them, right? So you'll see a few more tiger shark photos in here because I think to me they're the apex predator. That the tiger sharks and bull sharks are the equivalent of diving literally with tigers and lions in the wild, except that there's no cage and you can be within a few feet of them. And going from the big to the small, this is a very rare species called the blue-ringed octopus. Very venomous. One of these bites you, it can kill you within. It's got a very powerful neurotoxin that can kill you really quickly. And as in nature, anything that's brightly colored, generally it's like a challenge. It's like, yeah, come on, bro, bring it on. This is exactly, and they're actually fairly. You don't need a strobe to make them look. They pop in the water. They can actually change the color and make themselves more better camouflaged, but they have this bright yellow and these almost fluorescent blue rings on them, which is a sign that says, "Don't mess with me." I say. Again, really cool. This was actually again taking funny enough with the fisheye lens because I didn't have anything better. He was moving along, he's hunting. Let me get very close. I got the shot. Kind of didn't really seem too bothered about what I was doing, and he kept going. With octopi, if you scare them, they sort of swim off and they shoot a jet of ink. And the moment you do that, for me that's a failure because that means you stress the animal. So yeah. And again, moving to the realm of the bizarre, wobbegong sharks. These are they're shark family, but they're like basically ambulatory carpets. There's not a whole lot. They're pretty flat. So if you try to shoot them, take a normal photograph of them, it looks pretty doesn't look very interesting. They have these little tassels on the side and the bottom feeders. So I think with sharks, the sharks also these sharks operate at different depths. Some sharks are bottom feeders; they're always found close to the bottom in shallow waters. Other sharks are deep water sharks; they're found in deeper waters at depth. And yet other sharks are found in deeper waters but at shallow depths. So the wobbegong sharks are found in shallower waters, and like I said, they're bottom feeders, so you always see them sort of lying on the bottom, resting on the bottom. Usually on the day they're under rocks. Sometimes you see one lying on a table coral or whatever, which is what this guy was doing. And octopi. They're a lot of fun. Depending on they actually have personalities. Some octopus actually kind of a bit shy. The moment you come close, they kind of retreat into a cave on sort of the rocks. Others are pretty inquisitive. I haven't put it here. When I was in the Andamans, I had a golden retriever. We used to go for a walk on the beach every day. And so in the tidal pools, he saw an octopus. He was sniffing the octopus. The octopus pulled out its tendril. He got closer to sniff the tendril. The octopus actually jumped onto his nose. So I have a photo of Frodo, my goldie, with an octopus stuck on his nose. Then he shook it, and it went back in the water. Octopus wasn't harmed. Goldie wasn't harmed. But yeah, so they can be quite playful. This fellow, if you notice, there's another octopus in the back. I don't know if you can notice, right in the darker one, just to the right of the octopus. So these two, I think they were in a mating ritual, and they were going along somewhere. When I stopped to take a photo, and this guy saw his reflection in my dome port. So what he claimed, he actually came and climbed onto my port. So what he's doing right now, my dome port, he's actually got his tentacles all around my dome port. He actually climbed onto it. So I had like an octopus stuck to the tip of my camera. And I just bought the dome port, and the glass is actually really, really expensive. And I'm like, bro, can you please not scratch my brand new dome port? Thankfully, my port did not get scratched. So and I got a nice photo out of it. So I'm happy about this. And moray eels. Moray eels look pretty scary because whenever you see them, they always sort of they opening and closing their mouth. It's like a threat display. Like, yeah, come on, I'll bite you. But that's actually how they breathe. They take in water from the mouth and they expel it from the gills. So they're actually, again, very docile. They just kind of look there and they kind of watch you. I was in the Maldives I just came back from there on the 1st of January. On the 31st, we're diving this site, and again, this place where they dump this fish waste into the waters. So I was photographing this moray, and a bunch of fish waste fell next to it, and these 3 stingrays pounced on it. And they're so involved in chasing that bit of fish bait that they went all over the moray. The poor moray was under the stingrays, getting rolled around. Then finally the stingrays took off, and the moray is like, what just happened? He swam off in it. If an animal can emanate disgust, that moray was emanating disgust. Like, what are you doing to me? Anyway, so this is called a white-eyed moray. a different type of morays. Well, again, you can see when they open the mouth and close the mouth, it's actually they're actually breathing. They're not being aggressive. And this is a frog, another type of frogfish. If you remember, I showed you guys a frogfish earlier. So again, you can kind of make out the eye, you can make out the spines, but if you look at the back of the back where the strobes haven't lit the right fin, right from our perspective, so you notice that doesn't stand out that much compared to the background, does it? And that's what it really looks like. So it just, and if you notice these growths on top of the frogfish, on the spine, on the dorsal spine, you'll see these small growths on it. So all of that make it look very much like a part of the reef. And that's what makes them such good ambush predators. They're very hard to actually spot. And boxfish. Boxfish are very cool. They're very tiny. They can be about maybe 4 inches in size. They're actually pretty much like square boxes. They're very small fins on the side, and sort of when they swim, the fins are moving furiously and they're moving really slowly. Like, it's kind of cute to see. And again, because they're small, they're also a bit more timid. So getting one to face you just requires a lot of patience. You got to wait in place. You can't chase them. If you chase them, they run away. You got to wait for them to get used to you, to get closer to you. So it's just a simple. It's a very simple. Technically speaking, there's nothing very complicated about this photograph. Just let it come close and shoot. Get the exposure right, focus right. You're done. The hard part about photographs like this is waiting for the animal to come there, which is anywhere from 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes you have to dedicate. And that's sort of where that patience comes. If you're a wildlife photographer, you know about it. But for a lot of people who do other genres of photography, the idea of waiting 10, 15 minutes, because again, when you're diving, you're finite amount of time. It's not like I can spend my entire day. Each dive is going to be anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes. So do I want to spend 15 minutes photographing this subject when it may not even come there? So a lot of people just said, you know what, I'll try for a minute or two. If it doesn't happen, they move on. Then you end up missing the shot. So again, it is always a trade-off. You could spend 15, 20 minutes here, not get this shot, and then miss something else either, right? So you have to decide sort of what's important to you. And octopus. Again, there's nothing very special about this photograph. So just to show you what an octopus looks like outside its environment. So these are a type of reef octopi. And in Lembe, they're actually quite well known because what they use is they use coconut shells and they hide inside the coconut shells. So you'll see them sometimes even in not just coconut shells, any kind of box or whatever, they'll make a home out of that. So they're well known for coconuts because you'll find them inside a coconut. Then you see them reach out with their tentacles, grab the other half of the coconut and close the cage. So if you actually open it up, they'll reach out and be like, what, and very politely take it from you and close it. So I generally don't do that because again, that's disruptive to the animal's natural behavior. But I've seen them sort of go inside a coconut and close it, which is very interesting behavior. So for all we talk about sort of wastage and stuff like that, the animals actually adapt to it fairly well. When you have trash coming in the ocean, a lot of them do make a home there. There's an entire part in Indonesia called Lembe, which is called muck diving, because you're diving there's no reefs. It's just this black sand that you see. There's Coke cans, there's beer bottles, and there's sort of boxes. And the amount of marine life that's made its home in that is amazing. So, give them a chance, and marine animals are very, very versatile and adaptable. But you just have to give them a chance, and not kill them sort of for food wherever you see them. This is a shark. It's called a nurse shark. They are probably, if any of you guys have Labradors, they are the Labradors of the underwater world. Just kind of lie there looking very goofy. All day they just kind of do nothing. Then in the evening they wake up for food, and when they start hunting, then if you're around there, they're a bit clumsy as well. So there's a sight when it gets a bit darker, they wake up and they kind of bump into you. So you're shooting something, there's a shark that goes by, it's bumping into you, and like, what are you doing? There's one shark that's swimming between your legs, another shark hitting you from the side. It's kind of a really fun experience. They're one of the few sharks, you can see a row of teeth in the back, but unlike most sharks, they do have teeth, but they don't have that massive multiple sort of rows of serrated teeth that for as other sharks. So as a little bit more docile, let's put it this way. Here's another moray. It's just so it's inside something called a barrel sponge. Sponge is like it's an underwater organism. It's not quite a coral. It's not quite but it's a coral adjacent. Let's put it this way. And they actually they're good. They're popular food for green turtles. Green turtles will munch on these barrel sponges. And it's always for the longest time I've wanted to find like a fish inside a barrel sponge. And finally, after years and years of searching, last November in Banda, I got this moray eel sitting there, which made me really happy. I spent about 10-15 minutes looking at him going, wow, super cool. Manta rays. Manta rays are, again, probably the most graceful animals you can see underwater. This is shot with a fisheye lens. So this thing was about maybe a foot and a half away from me. There's a current going from left to right, and the manta was also feeding in the current. So, and eventually I think it drifted into me and hit me with its fin a few times as well. I'm trying to back away, and it's drifting into me. Behind me there's coral, so I can't back away and hit the coral. So I finally put one hand to protect myself, and then just whack, got hit in the face a few times. Then finally decided it had enough and swam off. Never a dull moment with mantas. And then sometimes it's not just about sort of documentary, right? Once you start getting wide angle subjects, I found this really the whole. These are called longfin bannerfish, and usually this is called not exactly schooling bannerfish, which is some places call it a different species of bannerfish, other places just call it longfin bannerfish. But anyway, it's nice to see whole things spread out like that in front of the eyes. It's just a serendipity in terms of how things just fell into place when I was taking this shot. And I've been to this site multiple times, and I've never just had exactly this moment happen again. So very lucky I was there at the time. I had my camera. It was one of my favorite shots. I really enjoy looking at it. It's at the patterns and stuff. Going back to tiger sharks. Again, like I said, I never get bored with tiger sharks. So this is again near the fish factory where in Maldives they historically throw the refuse into the water. Because they throw the refuse in the water, and it is right next to it's actually quite deep water. It goes to about 200-300 meters deep. So down there be tiger sharks, and then they come up to feed. So actually, from where you're shooting, from the perspective, they actually come up from behind you. So you're looking at this camera. Next thing you see this gray shape sort of just going by you, and like, oh, that was a tiger shark. And then after they eat, then they go past you and they go back down. So there's a lot of teeth in that mouth. just a point. It's a far too excessive number of teeth. And then again, I like patterns underwater. So when the reefs basically serve as nursery for marine lives. So a lot of fish they spawn. When they spawn thousands of eggs, and initially, like those eggs get eaten by predators. Then, some percentage of that basically spawn and become fry or glassfish. Then, as they get bigger, more and more predators come after them. So all these fellows they know to hang right next to reef formations for safety. So when a predator comes, they can hide, duck under, or come very close to the reef for protection. And this makes some really nice effects sort of with the whole when all of them are sort of circling around and so on and so forth. And again, here basically it's fairly chaotic motion, right? They're going here, they're going here. So getting them all to come in one place is also can take a bit of time. I think I tested my wife and I've been diving together now for about 7-8 years. This was the dive I think I tested the patience because I spent about 30 minutes in here and she's like, "What are you doing?" We see this every day, but for me, everything was falling into place on this side. The coral, the colors. You see do you see this coral on the bottom left of the screen that looks like a fan? That's a gorgonia, and inside that is where you show the pygmy seahorses I was showing you earlier in that type of coral. So to give you a scale, you can see how small the pygmy seahorses would be. If I were to just put a dot on that, that's how large the seahorse would be for scale. Yeah. And barracuda. So I showed you this photo of the barracuda school. So here we basically they were kind of just meandering around there, and I was trying to get close to take a photo. Then something spooked them, and suddenly they just went flying by me, and I barely had time to get one shot before they were past. Literally, and my camera was ready. That's how fast they go. You don't realize that sort of when you're looking at something, how fast these things can move when they're really, really motivated. In a fraction of a second, this entire school was behind. I think I got two shots. One here, one with about half the school already passed, and then empty water. I got 4 shots of empty water. So, and this is called a great barracuda. Great barracudas are solitary animals. They're also very inquisitive. So sometimes, especially on a night dive, if you have a light, they'll come and hunt by your light because they realize that the light helps them see prey. So in the Andamans, we used to do a night dive on a site called the Wall. And every time you do a night dive, you look, there's a glint of silver. Shine the light, there's a barracuda hanging out there. So he sees the light and then he goes hunting. So this one also very, very inquisitive. Again, this is a shot with the fisheye. So you can see how close he was. He was pretty much about a foot away from me. Very curious to see what I was doing. And when you don't make any sudden moves, you don't swim towards the animal, many of them will come very close to you to see what's going on. We tend to think of fish as being sort of very dumb animals that don't have much of a cognitive process. I can't speak to that, but I do know that fish do show a lot of curiosity, at least some species, and curiosity is definitely a sign of some kind of intellect. So make of that what you will. Then sometimes you don't really need like a great theme. It's just, I mean, the reef is just the colors of the reef. So for me, actually, I like the fact that you have sort of 3 circular lines. You have red, yellow, and then blue, right? The complementary colors and stuff. So, and then so all of them are sort of going diagonally, and then you have one fish at a roughly 90-degree angle, sort of breaking the symmetry. Ideally, I would have liked to have a diver sort of on the opposite top right of the screen to balance this image, but I still kind of like it enough. So something about this, appeals to me. So for me, a lot of these things, it's not just about documenting the marine life; it's also about the design and colors and shapes that you find underwater. So you'll see many photos that are like that. And so remember I was telling you about the stingray that had found some food. Yeah, this guy, he's got a bit of fish that's fallen off, and he's taken it and he's flying off. Just like my Labrador, when I give him a treat, he takes it and runs off to his bed to eat. That's what this guy is doing. And he doesn't care that I'm there. He basically just squirmed his way under me and kept going. So, and you can see all the sand being stirred up by these guys on the bottom. Just another look at just how that big school of barracuda I was talking about earlier. Just the size of those things. You just really, when you look at them, just fade into the distance. That school is still there. There must be about 500-600 of those in the school, but the school continues on for a while. And it's not just reefs. I mean, one of the cool things about diving underwater is shipwrecks. Actually, what got me into diving, I mean, I used to live in the US and in the North Atlantic. North Atlantic is cold water. It doesn't have too much in the way of reefs. What it does have, is a lot of shipwrecks. And I don't know about you guys. When I was a kid, I was growing up, I read Treasure Island and all those adventure stories for boys and stuff like that. So for me, shipwrecks always have this romanticized vision. There's lost treasure and things like that. Now I know this is just a fishing trawler. It's not going to have any kind of lost treasure. But just the idea of going and it's a snapshot into the past. This ship, looking at it, probably sank about 20, 30 years ago. So when you go and you're like, you see what was on that ship about 30 years ago. It's like I said, a snapshot of the past, and you see really cool stuff. You'll see a shoe lying there. You'll see something. There's a shipwreck in Egypt, which is a cargo ship carrying war supplies. So inside the ship, you'll see rows of jeeps, motorcycles, armored vehicles, boxes of rifles, medical supplies. So you see all of them inside the wreck, and it's just very very cool stuff to see. One of the ships I used to love diving is the Andhra Doria. It's a ship the size of the Titanic. It sank in 1951 or 53. The reason it's not so well known is because most of the people survived, so it's not as big a tragedy as the Titanic. But again, there sort of, it's in deep water. You can go in, you can see what the first class cabin was like. Now, of course, it's a lot of rubble there, but it's just really this. Every shipwreck has its own sort of characteristic. Some shipwrecks they feel tragic. Other shipwrecks they feel sort of solemn. But every time you dive a wreck, every wreck definitely has a certain sort of very unique feel to it, depending on the type of ship it is. So for me, I even now while I enjoy taking pictures, my first love is still wreck diving. Given a choice between diving a colorful reef and diving a shipwreck, I'll always choose a shipwreck. Shipwrecks are just something about them that's just hard to put into words. And getting back into design, this is the school of jacks. Jacks are hunters. So they're actually, the interesting thing about marine life, terrestrially, the food chain is pretty simple, right? You have grass or plants, you have things that eat plants, and you have things that eat plants, right? It's pretty much a linear thing. Underwater, the food chain is a lot more complex. For example, you have jacks are hunters. Jacks will come in, they'll eat different types of reef fish. Then you have bigger stuff like sharks. Sharks will hunt jacks. Okay, then there are other sharks that will hunt other sharks. Bigger sharks will hunt smaller sharks. Right. And then they can even be like sometimes big jacks will actually even hunt juvenile jacks or so on and so forth. So for example, here you see in the back, you see some barracuda swimming in the background. So the food chain is a lot more sort of complicated. It's more like a net than a chain. So a web than a chain rather. But yeah, this school of jacks are just kind of swimming along, trying to sort of suss out the action. And if they see something to hunt, then the whole school sort of swoops like almost like a fighter plane approach. They'll form a squadron in a line and then just go blasting at the reef. And then you have a school of fish that the target, the whole school suddenly just scatters, and you see these things flying through. Really cool. And like this, for example, how many of you guys are into wildlife photography? Anyone who likes wildlife photography? Presumably yes, no? Yeah.
Oh, the majority do love wildlife photography.
Yeah. So now, when you go to on a game drive, like how many species do you see, right, on a given game drive? 3, 4, 5 of mammals, maybe 10 if you're lucky, right? And of that 10, how often do you see actually hunting behavior or something like that? Very rarely. Underwater, the cool thing is on any given dive, you'll see 50 to 100 species. You'll see hunting, you'll see mating, you'll see territorial displays. The amount of action that you see on a reef just like blows away anything that you see on a terrestrial. I mean, I go to Africa, I spend about 2 weeks in a national park. I'm lucky if I see lions on a kill once. Right? And it's a kill, forget hunting. Here, like you see, every time you see like, oh, did you see a shark catch something? See the jack catch something? Hunting, all this behavioral stuff, you see a lot more underwater. And then sometimes, like I said, for me, like the design is really simple. So this is actually an anemone. An anemone is usually opened up because that's how in strong currents they fold up for protection. So here, you basically, you can just see a folded up anemone in the sunburst. For me, what I like about this is just it's taken the chaos and beadiness of a reef and simplified into very sort of simple design element. The sun in the back, there's a coral, there's a diver floating around, and that's about it. No distracting elements. But this is the kind of image I've been trying to sort of shoot more of late. Not just, oh look, here's 100 different things happening. It's just finding a moment of serenity in the reef, because despite all that action that's happening, reefs are really, really sort of calming places to be. So, and taking a step away from reefs, we have mangroves. Interestingly, it was after I came up from this dive that the guys told me that they have saltwater crocodiles here. I wish I had known, because I would not have gotten in the water had I known that. This is Indonesia. Yeah, so it's just this is a very different sort of a different type. This is again the periphery of the reefs, and again, use the marine life changes significantly. You don't have any coral. You have some coral growth here, but once you get into the mangroves, it's very different. It's a more literal species and stuff like that. But it's also very uncommon to see this soft coral growing on the mangrove branches. That's the first time I'd seen that. And then sometimes it's also like I like also presenting animals in their habitat, right? You've seen a close up of a moray eel earlier, but what does it look like when it's sort of it's going about its life like this, right? It's really it's minding its own business in like in a under a rock or a coral formation. It's kind of just looking at what's going on, and sort of there's a whole reef cape around it. And this is kind of, I think it's the only documented image I've seen of mating leopard sharks. So I was in Thailand, and it's actually significantly deeper than recreational divers are allowed to go. So this is at about 50 meters, and there was again it's shot with the fisheye. So for perspective, again I'm about maybe 2-3 feet away from them, and they were basically going round and round. And what the shark that's on top, basically immediately after I took the turn, he came turning around, and his tail hit me so hard on my ear. I thought almost like being slapped in the ear. I got a bit dizzy, and actually my mask got flooded with water, and it's almost like being slapped really hard. So, and at 50 meters deep, that was a bit unnerving, but I'm pretty happy to see this. And sometimes it's like, wow, what's going on in the reef? There's just so much stuff happening. For me, this is one of the images. Just the colors. Look at the stuff happening. There's fish, there's different types of soft coral, and yeah, just busy stuff. The polar opposite of that, the shot a few slides ago with the closed anemone, right? And that's the mood of the reef. The mood, it can change from one to the other. Again, like I said, going back to polar opposites. So busy, quiet, busy, quiet. Then it's not just always human formations also can make for very interesting sort of images. This is an example in Raja Ampat. The piers, the jetties, they're all made of wood, so they're fairly eco-friendly. And all these villages are sort of subsistence villages. They have these boats that go by. So underneath these piers is really nice. You have coral formation and fish life. So I was just trying. I saw the red coral there, and it looks really nice. Then I saw the sun, and they tried to find a perspective they could get a sunburst on top. And then it was just a matter of waiting to see if a fish would arrive. So what I've actually done is this pillar keeps going down. I basically scissor my legs around the pillar to stay in place because there was a current, and I hung upside down like this with my camera for about 15-20 minutes, waiting for a fish to come into the shot. Finally, this guy came in. I got my photo. I actually there are 2-3 other attempts as well with other fish, but each time maybe something or the other went wrong. Maybe there's a cloud and I didn't get the sunburst, or the fish was turning away from me, which is not so nice, or something or the other. So yeah, this was like an exercise in patience. Funny enough, last time I went back and I tried to get this shot again, something similar. It didn't happen. I actually spent 40 minutes like clamped around a pillar waiting, and nothing happened. So you win some, you lose some, right? Tiger sharks. I like tiger sharks. Again, you notice what he was doing. He's coming at you. I turn towards him. He turns sideways. It's all virtually every shot I have tiger sharks is them coming at you and then turning away, because they come at you. The moment you turn your camera at them, they're like, oh, they turn away. Like, no, I was going somewhere else. Very suspicious behavior. So interesting, actually. This guy. So tiger sharks have 2 eyelids. So one is they have a normal eyelid, and then what I call the attack eyelid. I forget the term for it. So when they're attacking, they bring that down. That protects the eyeballs in the eyeballs. So this guy had that attack eyelid actually down, closed. So the moment I turned the camera, he turned, and then the eyelid came up. I'm like, Very, very suspicious, buddy. I know what you're trying to do. But the other thing you notice about tiger sharks is that they're generally, most sharks are like this. Actually, they're lighter on the bottom and darker on top. The reason for this is when you're looking up, you see a lighter belly. So when you look up the sky, it's lighter, so it matches it better matches the background. And when you're looking down, it's darker, so better matches the depth. So most of these ambush predators have sort of two tones. Upper part is darker, lower part is lighter. There's some sharks don't, because the ones that are absolutely on the bottom all the time, they're sort of a uniform color because they're bottom feeders. They don't really have they're never going to be up in the water column. So these tiger sharks, which can be at the various depths, they're sort of optimized to be effective predators no matter where they are. This is like just a nice shot. I thought like a diver descending in Banda. So these are coral chimneys caused by in volcanic islands. So here you just have this chimney going down to the water, and you can descend through it, and then you have a lot of coral growth on it. So, another example, I showed you School of Jacks earlier. Here's another one. So Jacks also, interestingly, sometimes they start funneling. And it's not sure that if it's a defensive thing or it's meant to confuse predators, because I've seen them funneling even when there's no predator around, and just go round and round and round like a tornado. These guys had started to form the tornado, going up and round. So, and again, like I said, this for me is just like it's a design. I just like the design of this. Like a river of fish flowing through to the reef. So. And again, this is another shot that I think is not particularly complicated in terms of shooting. But for me, like so, the color scheme is what appeals to me. Like red, blue, and yellow are like just like the perfect color wheel. It's the ideal color wheel to have in an image. So I every time I see a barrel sponge and a sunburst, I try to take a photo. But in this time, by themselves, it's quite boring. If you don't have the two butterfly fish in there, it's pretty static. But then, if you look at the angle, it's sort of going, from diagonally across the screen, and the butterfly fish are going again orthogonally to the line formed by the barrel sponge and the light. That adds a bit of dynamic sort of interest to the image, I feel. Anyways, that's I've gone through the sort of the some images here. Let's talk a little bit more about the technical side of underwater photography and sort of what goes into it. Now, obviously, it's a hostile environment underwater. And hostile in the sense not because everything's out to hurt you, but because humans are not meant to survive underwater, right? So you need training in scuba diving. And the very act of sort of maneuvering in the water is not as intuitive. It does require regular practice and skills, and getting comfortable to the point that you can take on the task loading of handling a camera is something that can take a bit of time to acquire. And then because of task loading, when you're diving, the best sort of action happens when there's a current. When there's a current, there's nutrients flowing in the water. When there's nutrients flowing in the water, small fish come out to feed on the nutrients. When the small fish come out to feed on the nutrients, the big fish come to hunt them. So generally, that means the best photography is in conditions that are a little bit more demanding. So you have to be very careful that while you're doing that, you're not losing track of how much air you have, how deep you're going, how long you stayed in the water, and things like that. So, here's an example of me taking a photo of a turtle underwater. Again, you're waiting for the turtle to pose or whatever, and it's very easy to say, "Oh, just be there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes." New divers, it's amazing how often they get confused. On Google, somewhere buried in a Google reviews, there's a 1-star review from a lady who basically was convinced we only took her diving for 10 minutes. I'm like, you did 45 minutes. She's like, nope, there's absolutely no way that could have been 45 minutes. The only problem is if she had asked us, then I could have showed her the dive computer and the time. This happened after she went back, so we couldn't improve it to her. But I'm like, we've taken the boat out for you for like, it's a 4-hour trip. We're not going to cheat you for like another half an hour more or less, but she's convinced because the time just flew by so fast. And the other part is because you're distracted, it's very easy to get separated from your buddy. And diving, when you're diving, you always need to be with someone as a buddy, as a backup. And again, I'm focusing on shooting something there. Your buddy's the photographer shooting something there, and you're lost. And like I said, carrying the big equipment. If you, for example, if you look at the photo on top, right? What I was shooting was a turtle that was going up. And again, when you're diving, going up very quickly or coming down can be also dangerous depending on how fast you go up. You have to control all of that. So when I'm going up, I have to control my breathing. I have to control how fast I'm going up. I have to manage my equipment. I have to keep the turtle in the frame. I have to adjust the exposure on my camera because as the turtle goes up, the light changes as well. And depending where he goes, where the sun is, the light is changing. So all of this stuff you have to be doing and rapidly in the course of a few seconds. So it's a very heavy amount of task loading, right? But the benefit of that is, of course, unlike terrestrial wildlife, I'm in a jeep, the animal is there, this is what I shoot. Underwater, the animal is here, I can go above it, I can go to this side, I can go this side, I can go under. You have full 360, 540. In fact, you have a full sort of, it's not just on one plane, you can go up, down. So you have a lot more freedom in choosing angles and perspectives that you do. So in terms of creative freedom, it's orders of magnitude higher than you would on land. And of course, like I said earlier, you have a lot more species in action to shoot as well. So there's always something to shoot. So on any given dive, you can easily burn 50, 100 shots shooting something. But now, technically, there's two challenges. One is that it gets darker underwater because of light absorption. Second, because red tends to get absorbed faster than other colors, so you also lose red. So as you go deeper, even at 5-10 meters, there's a very strong blue cast. And as you go deeper, that blue cast increases, and the overall light levels also drop. So what you end up with a shot like this, right? This is what a scene looks like if you look with your eyes. It's dark. There's a very strong blue cast. There's not much else happening here. Right? Okay. So you see dark. Okay, I can fix it in Photoshop, right? I can brighten the whole thing. Okay, you can brighten the whole thing, but then everything gets brighter, right? But there's still no. If you look at the fish in the background. In the foreground, there's not much tonal separation between the fish and the background, right? They're all kind of more or less about the same exposure value. So that's where using a strobe comes in. If I use a strobe, I can just light the subjects. I can make the subjects brighter. I can make them pop. So one of the things that you to get good photographs underwater, you need a strobe. A strobe is basically, for some reason, a fancy term for a flash. An underwater flash is called a strobe, right? The second thing is loss of sharpness and clarity. Like on land, I can use a telephoto and shoot a subject that's 50 meters away. And if I have a good telephoto lens and I follow good technique, I keep it supported, I use the right shutter speed, I can get a really sharp shot. Underwater, even the clearest water degrades sharpness very, very rapidly. So generally speaking, if it's more than 2-3 meters away, it's not going to be sharp. So what you have to do is you have to shoot something very close. Like even look at this manta photo. At first blush, it looks pretty decent, right? It's reasonably sharp and well exposed and so on and so forth. This is at 2 meters. Now go back to the manta shot I showed you earlier, which is shot from about a foot away. And now again, it's probably not the highest resolution of this thing, but you immediately can notice how much sharper, how much more contrasty. If you look at the gills at the bottom, just look at how well exposed the gills are on the manta on the right versus the one on the left. That gives you an idea of how the contrast varies. And the right photo is taken with a Canon R7 modern ILC camera. The one on the left. The right photo is taken with a 16 megapixel camera for 2018, which is by now is fairly obsolete in terms of sort of megapixels and autofocus and all that stuff. But the image quality is much better with that. So you need to get close to your subject. So you can't, in a land safari, you can take a big ass. I have a 500 prime. I have a teleconverter on that, and I can sit in my campsite and shoot something far away. Not really, but you get the idea. Underwater, you have to get close. So whether it's a small subject or big subject, you have to get close, and that's where the challenge lies in getting close to something without scaring it, or without initiating like a more aggressive response in the case of sharks or whatever. So what does that mean for equipment? So underwater, you do not use telephotos, right? You use macro lenses for close-up stuff, but for other stuff, you basically your goal is to get closer. So imagine if I look at this subject here, if I have a low field of view, I have to be a certain distance away from it. If I have a high field of view, I can get closer, right? Does it make sense to you guys? And because I can get closer, like we said, my image is going to be sharper. It's going to have more contrast, and it's going to be a bit clearer. Because again, if it's more than 2.5 meters away, it's typically not worth shooting. It's not going to be good enough for publication quality. So what this means is your angle of view that you shoot underwater should be suitable for what you're trying to shoot. So if you're shooting big stuff like manta rays or whatever, you need almost a fisheye so that you can get very close to it and still get something that's 3-4 meters in your image. And even with your strobes, even I can have the most powerful strobes in the world. Okay, imagine now you're at 5 meters in the water, right? At 5 meters in the water, have you been in a swimming pool that's about 3-4 meters deep? You see, do you notice things are blue there? And that's a sunlight. At 4 meters, even the sunlight is being overpowered by 3 or 4 meters of water. So if I have something that's 2 meters away from me and I have I use my strobes, flash, the light will travel 2 meters to the subject, it'll travel 2 meters back. In 4 meters, no matter how powerful my strobes are, I'm gonna lose red there. So again, for effective lighting, I need to get my strobes close to the subject. Again, meter and a half. Again, 2 meters is about sort of my maximum limit on shooting. So that's why you just getting close is like the rule number 1 of diving. If you're not, most people think they're close, they're not close enough. Right. So for shooting wide angle, typically you want a field of view of 150 to 180 degrees. Even a rectilinear wide angle lens, like a 16 to 40 or 17 to 40 or whatever, is about 120, 130, 140 degrees. And even that is not really that good. The best wide angle lenses are usually fisheyes. So again, let's talk about common lenses that people use. So for macro, people use like 50 to 100 mm lenses. Like I said, they're great for macro. They let you sort of shoot a wide range of subjects, and even fish portraits and so on and so forth. Fisheye is a very specialized lens for wide angle photography. If you're into wide angle photography, that's what you use. So I use the Tokina 10-17, the Canon system, and the Olympus 8mm fisheye with an Olympus system. And again, it gets you really good dramatic perspective, right? Because you get close to something that fills the screen, the perspective is really dramatic. And then you can also use rectilinear wide angle lenses for specialized uses, like if you're trying to photograph sharks which are not going to come super close, or as a generalist lens for like taking fish portraits, or I'm not sure what I'm going to see on this dive, I kind of want to do a bit of this, a bit of that. Then you have these the rectilinear wide angle lens. You notice in here, there's no telephoto. No one ever uses a telephoto underwater, ever. There's no point. Going more than 35, 40 mm is kind of worthless. So now let's talk about the equipment that you need to shoot. So generally, most people get started with a GoPro. GoPro, it gets, and I say GoPro, it could also be something similar like a DJI or Insta360 or whatever. So they have the benefit of being small and easy, of being relatively cheap, easy to use. Just point and shoot, right? They're good for video. They're actually not very good for image quality. The image quality in most of these action cams is quite rubbish. So what's a better system to use for that is actually a phone housing. There's the brands. These are about 30, 35,000. They can put your phone in them, and then you can use your phone's camera for both photo and video. And as inbuilt cameras go nowadays, especially the new iPhones, actually the image quality is actually surprisingly good. And you can shoot really good video with it as well. The downside is you cannot use these with strobes, so you can't scale up this. So it's good for what it is, but beyond that, if you decide you want to expand, you can't do it with this. So what most underwater photographers start getting into is a compact camera in a waterproof housing for this. Olympus is pretty much the most common brand used for underwater these days. Sony and Canon as well. So if you put the camera in a housing, you get something very similar to a phone in a housing, except probably better image quality for photo, because you can shoot in camera raw and that bigger sensor and all that stuff. And you can the video quality depends on which camera you're using, usually not as nice. And the best part about this is that it's scalable. So you can actually scale up this as your needs expand. You can add accessories and sort of start covering more and more varied situations with a compact camera. However, it only scales up to a certain point. There's the last 5-10% of image quality and stuff, you for that you really need a full system, which is the housed interchangeable lens camera like a Canon or whatever, be it full frame or APS-C or even micro four thirds. This is, like I said, is end-game quality, but it's a very specialized tool. So remember I showed you the different type of lenses that you can use. So you basically have to, if you're doing, you have to decide what lens you're going to take underwater. Because obviously you can't change your lens underwater. So you decide on this dive, I'm going to shoot macro, I'm going to shoot fisheye, or I'm going to shoot rectilinear wide angle. And then you're stuck with that. And that can, sometimes when you get unexpected sightings, that can really cause you to cry. I had a macro lens on my camera once, and I had a 4-meter whale shark go by. And I'm like, this is absolutely useless. I can maybe shoot like, with 2 square inches of the whale shark. And so it's a very specialized tool. And also it's bulky when you travel, so the compact camera housing is actually the most versatile setup for people, and I'll tell you why in a second. This is what I look like when I'm carrying my house camera setup. Do you see the size of this thing? So I have 2 strobes, I have 2 video lights, I have a GoPro on top. I need both hands to operate it. So when I have both hands to operate it, how am I going to operate my equipment? I have to let go, I have to hold on to it with one hand, I have to operate my equipment with the other. If I need to use 2 hands, what do? I let go of my equipment? And it will sink or float up or whatever. So this, it's also pushing it in the water adds a lot of drag, right? It's just physically demanding. It requires advanced dive skills. It is seriously expensive. I mean, you can buy a car for the price of some setups that are out there in the world. And like as I mentioned earlier, it's not versatile, right? You can't shoot small stuff, big stuff all on the same dive. You have to decide, okay, I'm going to shoot big stuff or I'm going to shoot small stuff. And if the subject doesn't cooperate, tough luck. And it requires time at the subject for the best results. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And like the worst thing right now for me these days is that my camera setup alone is about 15 kilos. And that goes in my hand carry because I'm not checking in expensive camera equipment. So I dread the words when people go, "Sir, can we weigh your hand carry luggage?" Then I'm going to cry. Compact camera system on the other hand, easy to start with, easy to manage underwater. You can just hold the person in this photo is actually one of our instructors. He's using a housing for a phone camera, but the camera housing is about the same size. So easy to manage. You can just start shooting with that. Then as your skills progress, you can scale up. Right. And like I said, 90% of the use cases of a pro style camera you can cover with the compact camera, and sometimes even more because you can on the same dive you can shoot small stuff and big stuff, while the guy with the expensive camera can only shoot one of the subjects. So these photos are not by me; they're taken by a friend of mine. He's actually a very, very good macro photographer named Joydeep. You can also follow him on Instagram as well. These are all taken with the compact camera. Very basic sort of Olympus. I think in his case, a Sony RX series. Not that basic, but still a nice camera. And they're amazing shots. Right? Anyone even with like a full-ass professional grade rig would be very happy to have photos like this. And this again, with the right accessories, this is taken with a compact camera, very basic Canon G7X and one very cheap strobe. And if you know how to use the equipment, you can actually get some really nice photos with that as well. So, and here's how you can scale up. So once you have the compact camera system, you get a tray. This tray is for mounting accessories to it. Then you can get flotation arms, the arms to balance your equipment so it's not too heavy or too light. And you can get different, depending on equipment, there's different sizes and stuff that you have lying around. These all in my storage for different equipment I use. Then you have clamps for attaching all of this stuff together. And then you need the lights. You need video lights. So on this, the small one on the left is kind of fairly inexpensive, cheap. It's easy to use. Then one on the right is about 1.5 kilos, very powerful, but also like just every time I travel with it, I question my life choices. And then so that gives you the lighting that you need. And then you can get these wide angles. So remember what I told you guys about sort of getting closer to a subject, right? The problem with most compact cameras is they don't have a very wide field of view, maybe 90 degrees, 95 degrees at the most. So you can buy these wide angle adapters that screw on that increase the field of view. So you can go from 90 to 110, 90 to 130, 90 to 150, depending on how much you want to spend. And then you also have close-up lenses. So close-up lenses basically they're like macro lenses, diopters that lets you focus closer. So again, with the same compact camera that I have, a G7X, I can add a wide-angle adapter and shoot, maybe get 90% or 85% field of view of my pro-grade setup. And with the macro lens, again, I can get a very similar sort of close-up capabilities as my DS ILC camera. So again, so these are the ways you can scale up. And when you scale up, it can actually become something like this, which is not that different from the big rig I was using, except it's a bit smaller, lighter, and easier to travel with. So that's sort of how the camera. And the good part is that if the bug bites you, you can then always just change the camera, put in a mirrorless camera instead, and all the other parts get carried over. The last thing I want to talk a little bit before I wrap up is just the shooting process and how this works. Right. So here is a typical reef scene. When you look at it, this is what it looks like. You see a coral, you see fish, and the guide is showing something, but it's fairly dull, right? There's nothing really like, yeah, what is this? So the first thing I do is I just take a test shot to see what the reefs look like in real color, because again, this is light which is attenuated by the depth and also where I've lost the red. So the moment I use a flash on it, looks like this. A little bit better, right? But is it still a wow shot? Not really. Yeah, whatever. For me, I can say whatever. So then I spent some time, and I spent a couple of minutes just setting up the lights properly and exposure properly, and I got this. And suddenly I'm going, this is a little bit better. Huh? You can see the fish, you see a bit of sun on the top, there's a bit of color and pop. But again, is this really making you go, wow? For me, no. So I spent another 5 minutes of 40, 50 shots, and now I'm like, okay, this is not so bad. All the fish are pointed the one way, they're looking at the sun, there's something balancing the image on the other side. So this is a shot I could be pretty happy with. Right, but then I was there, and I was like, I just feel that this is still missing something. So I took a few more shots, and now the fish are going the other way. Okay, sun is over there, they're looking the other way. This is okay, this is kind of nicer as well, but for me, I'm looking at the show, this is feeling a little bit cramped, right? I'm not getting a sense of space or sense of the reef here. So I spent another 10 minutes, another 20, 30 shots trying different compositions, and I got this. And so I'm like, okay, this is a little bit better. I get a better sense of the reef there. You can see the spaciousness, the water around it. But something is missing here, right? There's a lot of stuff on the bottom left of the screen, not so much on the top left. So what I did then is I called my dive guide and hey, come here, and I use hand signals to tell him where to be. And then this was the end result that I got. And then luckily this coral grouper also happened to be swimming by. And this is a shot that I was finally very happy with. So basically I went from this, which on the left is what we saw, to the end game shot after spending about 20 minutes and taking about 80 to 100 shots to playing around with exposure, waiting for these fish to come into the right orientation and so on and so forth. So this is, when you're trying to get good shots, again, on land, sometimes when you're shooting wildlife, you don't have a choice, right? The lion is doing what the lion is doing, the tiger is doing what the tiger is doing, you shoot it. Underwater, because you're not a spectator, you're almost a participant in what's happening. You have a lot more time to sort of wait for the elements to come together the way you want. Another example is this. I mean, this is a shot I would normally have deleted. The only reason I'm keeping it is to show you what comes if I wait and give it some time, which is this. Exact same shot, same reef, except that here, I waited for some predators to pass by. When the predators pass by, all these fish sort of attain a common orientation, and I got this. And this reminds me a little bit of a spaceship kind of going through space or something like that or whatever. I mean, at least I like it, and my sort of criteria for images is what pleases me. So if you find it boring, that's fair enough as well. And again, so the point I'm trying to say is that, again, this is also not a very complicated shot. I have better sort of more action shots of tiger sharks. But again, I like this one because the sharks kind of seems to be looking up at the sky, the sun's coming down on it, there's other fish around it. And again, this is just a matter of waiting for the right elements to come into the place. So even though underwater photography is a lot more gear intensive compared to other shots, I mean, I firmly believe that if you're obsessing about camera lenses or something, you're doing something wrong. This day, it doesn't matter whether you're shooting with a kit lens or you're shooting with a Leica. optical quality is good enough. I've never seen a good photo where I've gone, oh, this is a really nice photo, but it would have been better shot on a Leica or something. Ever. I've never looked at a photo and gone, oh, this is a great shot, but the corner sharpness isn't so good. People spend far too much time obsessing about resolution and all that useless stuff online. It doesn't matter. You have the gear. If you know what the limitations of your gear are and use it within those limitations, gear is good enough these days. It's at least for me, I'm the limiting factor on almost every photograph I take. So, anyways, that's the thing in a nutshell. So I hope you guys are still awake. I haven't put you guys to sleep. At this point, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. Happy to answer anything you might have.
Yeah, I guess people can unmute themselves and come on screen and ask the questions directly.
Okay, so I'm going to put up the comments box. Yes.
Hello, good evening, Vandit. It was a wonderful presentation. My name is Venkat.
Yes.
Yeah, to begin with, made me recollect, in the late 90s, 99 specifically, I got myself PADI certified in Key Largo, Florida.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, so when you showed your presentation, I got my memories. I went up to the 25 feet level, not the 100 feet level advanced.
Yeah.
So the basic thing, it was very difficult because there was a mini hurricane cyclone there.
Oh
But
dear,
still
yeah.
we did it. Yeah, a couple of questions for that. First one, you did not, maybe you did mention, but I didn't catch it. How many feet you went up to? Means I know that some of that were in very dark ones, so you went very deep. Somewhere on the surface, practically 10, 20 feet, or if you tell meters, about 5 to 10 meters. So can you please tell about that?
It varies really depending on what the subject. For example, the mating leopard sharks, I took that at 52 meters, which is about feet is how much is about 185, 200 feet. No, less. That's about 165 feet.
Oh, that's very deep. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm also a tech qualified diver, so I don't have a depth limitation if I have the right mixes. For an average recreational diver, they're limited to 100 feet, 30 meters,
Right.
130 feet with specialized training. And most of my shots are within that range as well, because generally when I go diving, I'm usually leading a group or with other divers. So I'm obviously staying with them as well. So I try to keep it at that depth.
Okay, so you mix with nitrogen? You go to that level, or?
Yeah, no, most of this is shot on air. If I'm doing tech stuff, I'm usually I'm doing rec penetration or something very demanding. At that point, I don't take my camera.
Okay, all right. And one other aspect there is, one of the most, good that you showed, other than the wildlife, you showed beautiful one picture at least of the wrecks. One of those boats next to the boat, and probably would have taken some World War II boats also, which is very particular, very nice. Have you also done any cave diving, which is very risky?
I used to go down to Florida to dive fairly regularly. I had some friends there, so I've tried cave diving once in Florida. It honestly doesn't really work that way. It didn't really appeal to me that much. If I'm going to be inside a confined space, I'd rather be inside a shipwreck. Yeah, sure. That's just me personally. I know I have a lot of people that are really into cave diving. It's never really appealed to me as much, to be honest.
All right. So again, thanks for the wonderful presentation.
Anytime. Sri Vishnu, you're asking about how to capture photos in a current. So you're right. So it depends on where you are. So sometimes in the reef there might be denuded rocks. So if you can hold on to them. I think I showed a photo of me trying to photograph a turtle where I had my elbows on a rock. So again, if you can do so safely, it's absolutely okay to do that. The problem happens is that with a lot of divers, my head is here, my legs are there, right? People, they put their elbows down and they're looking here. What they're not careful about is their feet in the back. The feet in the back are flapping around, and I've seen many times. I've seen the feet hitting coral and things like that. So generally, especially with newer divers, I'm not a big fan of telling them of normalizing the idea of holding on to stuff. But once you have a little bit of experience, your dive skills are good. Yeah, you can certainly brace yourself. Sometimes you don't have a choice. In which case, you just have to kick and try to take pictures, and it's hard work. So I actually couldn't find a high resolution version of that. I have this photo of a skeleton shrimp. I spent 130 minutes in one location in 2 dives in the Andamans. and I got 3 shots of the things because they're like very hard to move, and this was in the current, so just it was the hardest work I've done trying to get some photos. Even those barracudas that I showed, the big school of barracudas, they swim against the currents. You got to basically chase them, not chase them, but swim along with them. And barracudas are nicely streamlined. And I'm like not so streamlined anymore. So with the camera, it's really hard to. So that was also hard work. So. Katie asking if you have underwater photography. Yes, we do a lot. On almost all our trips, we actually do have that I'm leading. If the photographer's coming, we always do some underwater photography stuff.
Okay.
So, for example, I'm going to Sri Lanka next week. We're doing a wreck photography and a wreck diving and photography workshop with a couple of divers as well. So
Okay.
you can just message me on my Instagram is @Vandit Kalia.
Okay.
You can just ping me there, and I'm happy to go through sort of a trips and based on your diving background, what would be a good option for you.
Sure, I'll do that. I'll drop a message to you. Thank
Fantastic. Thank you. Look forward to it. The other question: the dive master keeps moving and doesn't stop. Yeah, that's the other challenge with photography, right? Because if you're diving in a group, remember I showed you that the best shots you get are when you spend time in one location, and that's sometimes not always easy to do with in a normal group. So one is that basically, when I travel by myself, I speak to the guys and say, listen, I'm a photographer. I need to go slow. Either get a private guide, or you pair up with some other photographers or things like that. But it's something you definitely have to manage and plan around. Or because otherwise it's like you're taking snapshots. You take two shots, and that doesn't really work for good photography. And there's no point spending money on 10, 15 lakhs on a piece of equipment if you can't spend the time to make good shots.
Thank you, Vandit. That's helpful.
Sorry?
I'm saying that is helpful. I'll try to get that now. Yeah.
Yeah. So how long did it take you? So I've been, like I said, I've been diving since 91, and I started underwater photography in 2001. My first 10 years was mostly doing technical dives, deep wrecks and stuff like that, where I didn't carry a camera. And then when I moved to the Andamans to start the dive center, then I started taking pictures. It's not really, there's no real particular deterrent for age. I'm 52, and sort of, it hasn't really sort of been an issue. It's photography is a bunch of things. It's your diving skills, which you can pick up. If you do with 20, 30 dives, you can start picking up the skills you need. And again, like I said, I don't suggest you get a big rig right away. Get a small rig and scale up. So as your photography skills improve, your dive skills improve along with it, and you can slowly start upgrading as you go. And age is definitely not a deterrent. More than that, just average physical fitness. You don't need to be a super fit athlete, but if you can, so maybe walk for 2-3 kilometers or a jog for maybe a couple of kilometers, that's a good level of fitness that you need for diving. You don't need much more than that.
Thank you, Vandit.
So Vandit, this is Prema here. So do you use your pictures, say, for research of commercial videos, or what?
No, so I've
use
had
with
one
the
hobby that's diving was a hobby that's become a profession, a career. And I don't even do enter competitions because I've realized I have a fairly competitive personality. So if I start entering into competitions, I'm like, oh, I have to win this, I have to win this. Then I start chasing trends or what people are doing. I shoot for myself. So I do nothing with my photographs. I'll share some on Instagram. The rest I put on my phone. I look at them when I want to. So I have zero desire.
I wasn't even thinking of competitions for you. What I thought is maybe, for research also, you may be giving some pictures. I mean, something.
No, I think if someone asks, I'm very happy to give them my photographs. Like people want to use it for screensavers, knock yourselves out. Earlier, I used to run this wildlife photography company called Photo Safari India. And so I've had a couple of my photos picked up by National Geographic Traveler and stuff like that, and other magazines and stuff. But then I found that sort of, honestly, the moment you start thinking about selling or competitions, you're trying to sort of make someone else happy.
Okay.
Right, because I have friends who are into it, and I've seen they're like, oh, will this work better in a competition? Will that work better in a competition? And that's fine. That makes them happy. For me, I do I enjoy this photograph, right? So for me, the process is creating photographs that are appealing to me. Like even this last photograph that I ended, I just liked. For me, this is a very pleasing image, right? Just the expression of the shark, the memory. So I don't do competition or anything like that. So, and no plans to.
And how long can you stay in the water for?
Like it depends on your depth, but an average dive is about 50 to 60 minutes, 45 to 60 minutes. If you're shallow, you can stay longer. If you're deeper, sometimes it's shorter. But an average, like I said, 45 to 60 minutes, and you do about 2 or 3 dives a day.
Anybody else? Any questions?
Okay. Well,
And any close encounters?
Hello.
yeah,
my
Radhika.
name is my name is Radhika. I haven't been into photography yet, but I do a lot of dives.
Okay.
Recently, my last dive was at Sri Lanka.
Oh, nice.
I did the the wreck dive.
Or the Sierra.
Yeah, Sierra.
Yeah, yeah.
So and then some other.
Uh,
So we did roughly 9 dives in 3 days.
uh,
It was a good experience, but I'm not into photography yet.
okay.
I haven't bought my camera. I plan to buy and slowly advance towards it.
Sure. If you need any help on gear and stuff, just drop me a message. I'm very happy to discuss gear and all that stuff with people. So
Oh, lovely. Yeah, that's nice.
yeah. Anything else?
So before you dive, do you also study about the species that are there? Because obviously you need to have a knowledge of what is, how close you can go to something and how dangerous a species is. So do you
A
kind of
little bit,
study
yes.
about them?
Yeah, with especially with tiger sharks and bull sharks, I make it a point to learn about the behavior because, like I said, mostly sharks are actually not that dangerous. I mean, sharks have been around for about 350, 400 million years. They haven't changed. They've only gotten a bit smaller, but they haven't changed. So basically, that means in 400 million years, nature couldn't improve on the design of a shark. Sharks and crocodiles, so they're perfection. But in those 350, 400 million years, sharks have very clear idea that this is a potential, this is, I can eat this is, I can mate with this, and this I don't care about. So we fall in that we don't care about category. So for the most part, they don't care about us. But again, because they're big, and also the way sharks test things is by nibbling. Like if you're blind, you touch things to see what they are, right? Shark's mouth. My Labrador, my Labrador puppy is about 2 years old. He's also very mouthy. When he gets playful, he's like, if the problem is when my lab does that, I go ow. When a shark does that, my entire arm comes off. Right. So, so they're not dangerous, but you just have to be careful about sort of the behavioral, watching the behavior and stuff like that. So with those guys, yeah, I am a bit observant when they're coming. You have to make eye contact with them, turn and face them. You can even stick your hand out or put something in the way. With other species, honestly, not as much. I'm also keen birder, so there's only so much like my brain can do in terms of identifying fish species and stuff like that. So with birds, I spend my time this is trying to identify warblers and stuff like that. With fish, I'm not as sort of into identifying fish as a lot as many other people. I like photographing them, but it stops there. So so to answer your question a little bit, yeah. So especially where safety and other stuff is involved, or if I need to know certain behavioral aspects to get better shots, I'll do that. And then of course you dive enough time, you learn, you pretty much pick stuff up from osmosis from watching, right? And we had a marine biologist that used to work with us. So then we see something, we'd ask, hey, why is this happening? Why is that happening? So you do pick up stuff as you go.
Okay, thank you. So any other question? Well, it was a fascinating presentation, really very fascinating. And underwater, you never think that there could be so much color and so much life underneath there, and it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and so at this point,
because for us, you don't see so much color, when you're just on the top.
Yeah, and at this point, I just want to make one last mention because see what happened. Let me ask: how many of you, if I would say, okay, I have some black buck meat for you, or how many of you would eat that? Most of you would say, of course not, right? Because in endangered species. the problem it is that because out of sight, out of mind, right? Because we don't see what's happening underwater, and also all the food that we get is very sanitized, right? You just get meat on a plate. You don't see how the chicken is killed, how the cow is killed, how the goat is killed, or whatever. What's happening with the ocean, like what I started with, is that we are really at an inflection point when where like a massive sort of crash in the population of the fish oceans. And it's very easy to ignore because, like I said, you don't see any of that stuff happening, right? You don't see the fish coming out in big nets and stuff like that. So again, I'm not saying that we should basically stop eating seafood or whatever, but there are sites that tell you this. It's called Know Your Fish, which tells you what fish is safe to eat at what point in time. I also encourage people to sort of, when you're going to places like Goa and stuff like that, and you see, don't eat at places that serve shark meat and stuff like that. Or at least tell them. Again, ideally, yes, we'd all become vegetarians and stuff, but let's be real, that's not going to happen, right? But what we can do is change our behavior a little bit and make it a little bit more sustainable. So again, I'm not so if you guys can start doing that and maybe convince one or two other people to do that, that alone is a big start. Is a start. So I'm not a big believer of single-handedly trying to change the world. That doesn't happen. But if I can change my behavior and this 20 of us here, if even 10 of you start changing what you do, and each of you gets one friend to do it, that's a start. So that's my only request to you guys, is that don't treat the ocean as inexhaustible source of resources. Yeah? Let's start to be a little bit more careful about what we do with it.
Yeah, I guess you have to be careful with nature I mean, at whatever level, whatever, wherever. That's something so precious, and I think it's only right that we respect it and we cherish nature.
Exactly.
Yeah, so absolutely wonderful presentation, Vandit, and thank you so much for your time and your presentation and your knowledge. I mean, there was a lot of information that we did get, and I'm sure this must have interested a lot of people to at least explore underwater photography. And I'm so glad that there were two ladies who mentioned that they would love to, do some photography, underwater photography. Yeah. So that's really encouraging.
Yeah, I put my Instagram up in the chat box. So if you guys can reach out to me there if they like. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll also share your contact with them.
Okay, so fantastic.
That will be done. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for having me.
It's on the website. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you for having me, and thank you guys for watching. I'm very happy to share some of the underwater world. I like it enough that I quit my job, and I much to my dad's dismay, you're leaving consulting, you're giving up your green card, you move back to India, kya kar rahe beta? And then to do this. So
any parent would be really, anxious about what is this guy up to. And
he was horrified. This is again 2003 when people had no idea what diving was all about. So.
I know. Well, I think now, it must be something very different when he sees your pictures and when he knows what you're doing and how it goes. But even then, I'm sure, there's a little bit of, what should I say, anxiety when you go for a dive.
In what sense?
In the sense, those people in your family who don't dive and who don't swim or something, don't they feel
that's the thing.
About them?
Honestly, diving has actually it's not an adventure sport. It's in India, it's considered an adventure sport because, very honestly, as a nation, we're not the most active of people, right?
Yeah.
But in the West, it's considered a family sport because the injury rate in diving is you're more likely to get injured playing cricket, swimming, or snorkeling. Diving actually has a lower injury rate than these sports. I mean, yes, it's possible to get hurt, but you have to actively work hard to hurt yourself. If you follow the basic training, it's actually a very safe sport. So my mom, I think in the beginning she was a little bit. Now she doesn't care. So
no, sure.
Yeah.
It's just the fear of the unknown for the others.
Yeah. But I think that goes away really fast. I think maybe within the first day or two, once you start seeing sort of what's happening, you're like, okay, people get hooked. You can see them getting addicted to it as you go. So it's kind of like being a drug dealer without the It's slightly more sort of a socially acceptable form. Right? You're hooking people to something really cool.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So thank you again, Vandit, and I think we'll call Dina. And
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
Vandit.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.